Okay.
Welcome, everyone. Welcome, everyone. Welcome. We are going to get started. Thank you so much for joining us. Welcome to the proverbial kitchen, where lots of important conversations happen in Jewish and many other cultures.
Come on, Bo.
Let's see here. All right, we'll try this. My name is Vlada Tepper. I will be your host today, along with Masha, who will do Q&A at the end. A huge gratitude to Folio Books for sponsoring this event and making this possible. If you want to, if you are sitting around the kitchen and want to open your videos, please feel free to join us, but of course, no pressure. We have samovar. We have matryoshka. We are really warming up here and getting ready to go. December is chock full of holidays. If you are celebrating Hanukkah, happy Hanukkah. We are going to try to finish today in time for all of you who are celebrating to light candles. Also this month marks the 30-year anniversary of the fall of USSR. All of the writers who will be sharing our work today have been shaped by this country that no longer exists. Today, we are amplifying immigrant voices. All of us are immigrants. And I would like to, if it's possible, to de-spotlight me and include everyone. I'd love to invite everyone to wave or put an emoji in if you know how to do that. If you are an immigrant or you identify as an English language learner or foreign-born, refugee, or any other label that connects, so wave at us, make some noises. I'm gonna see if I can see everyone. I see some emojis, thank you. Yes, yes, yes. Thank you everyone who's participating. If you identify as an immigrant or foreign-born or any other related label, that's a lot of us. So 1 in 7 people who lives in the US identifies by one of these labels. Our voices need to be heard. So while we wait for a few more minutes for more folks to join, I'm going to challenge you all to a game. And I want to see if you can identify who we are by writing in the chat. So we're going to do a round of introductions. I'm going to call on folks who will be presenting their work today. Meanwhile, please feel free, everyone, to write in the chat who you think is who. You can move your mouse to see everyone's names. And let's go ahead. I'm going to call on this Matryoshka to help us out. Olga, let's start with you.
All right. Yeah, I'm Olga Silverberg. Olga Leonidovna Silverberg. I was born in Leningrad in the USSR and grew up in St. Petersburg, Russia, and I now live in San Francisco. And my book is Like Water and Other Stories that came out in 2019 here in California.
Thank you, Olga. Next up, we have Tatiana.
Hi, everyone. I'm Tatiana Nikolaevna Sundeyeva. I was born in Kishinev, Moldova, and I live in San Francisco now.
Thank you, Tatiana. Up next, we have Lyanna. Lyanna, please unmute yourself. Lyanna Ferman, don't be shy. Meanwhile, everyone, please write in the chat your guesses about who is who as we are presenting ourselves. While Lyanna addresses tech difficulties, let's move to Sasha.
Hi, everyone. My name is Sasha Vasilyuk, Alexandra Fedorovna Vasilyuk, as I would be known if I was still back there. I grew up in Crimea, whichever country that belongs to now, Moscow and San Francisco, which is where I still live.
Thank you, Sasha. Next up, let's go to Marsha.
Hi, everybody. My name is Marsha, or also known as Maria Mikhailovna Rumor. I was born in Leningrad, also known as St. Petersburg, and currently I am just outside of San Francisco.
Thank you, Marsha. And next we have Maggie.
Hi, everyone. I'm Maggie Lovantoska, Margarita Lovantoska, and I was born in Kiev, Ukraine, grew up in San Francisco, and currently living in Oakland.
Thank you, Maggie. Lyanna, you want to try?
I'm so sorry, I got thrown off the Zoom. My name is Lyanna Ferman, or Lyanna Ferman. I was born in Kiev, and I now live in Los Angeles.
Thank you, Lyanna. So happy you got back in. And my name is Vlada Samuilovna Tepper. I was born in Kishinev, Moldavia, and I live now in Novato, California. So again, I will be your host for today. Masha will do Q&A at the end of the event. I want to see what we've got in the chat. Please, let's see. I don't see a lot of guesses. Just a few. Okay, thank you for everyone. I see some direct messages too. Feel free to resend it to the whole group. Don't be scared. It's totally okay to make mistakes. Go for it. So yeah, I'm gonna show the screen just for a few more seconds for more people to go ahead and give their guesses. Let's see if I can. Yeah, there we go. All right, so who is the question? You don't, if you want to just guess on a couple, because you only have a few more seconds. The big reveal about who is who will be after the reading and before the Q&A. Again, the big reveal will be after the reading, before the Q&A, so hang on. Couple of reminders before we jump into the reading. Number one, this event is being recorded. This way we can share it with more folks who couldn't attend. Also, we are going to be keeping everyone on mute almost the whole time, except for the applause. So please join me. You'll hear some incredible writing today. So I hope you'll join me to applaud together and make real noise. All right, so without further ado, I'm going to stop sharing and we are going to jump into the reading. So our very first writer sharing their work today is Olga Silverberg. Olga Silverberg is the author of Like Water and Other Stories, this incredible book, which you should pick up tomorrow at Folio Books at 11 o'clock. This is published by Why There Are Words Press and 4 other Russian language story collections. She has published fiction and essays in Electric Literature, Lit Hub, Alaska Quarterly Review, Confrontation, Scoundrel Time, and elsewhere. She writes book reviews for The Common, co-edits Punctured Lines, and co-hosts the San Francisco Writers Workshop. Olga, over to you.
Thank you, Vlad, and thank you, everyone. It's such a privilege and honor to be here. So I'm also really grateful to Folio Books for hosting this event. This is very kind of them. So I'm going to read my short story called Sweet Dreams. Having reached the age of 55, my mother has decided to try out retirement. She won't stop working. There are no opportunities for advancement in that. But she's decided to branch out and sign up for an advanced English class after work. Her older sister is taking the same class, and my mother can't let her sister surpass her at anything. This week, their teacher assigned them song lyrics to translate. My mother, determined to be an A student, messages me for help. Is there anybody out there? It's Pink Floyd, I tell her, from the wall. Pink is watching Gunsmoke on TV. The wall inside his head is almost finished. He's wondering whether anyone might help him break it down from the outside. Is there anybody out there? Is his distress call. Wow, my mother says, I'd better send you the entire exercise. I'm getting it all wrong. Fine, I tell her, but I already know English. Don't be so American. My mom types quickly. I can hardly keep up. Love changes everything. What does this mean? There's an 11-hour time difference between St. Petersburg and San Francisco. What's 9 p.m. her time is 10 a.m. for me. I've just made my morning coffee and opened my inbox. I need to get some work done. But then there's never a good time to talk. When it's evening my time, she's at work herself, and she never has time to talk to me when she's working. Love changes everything. I don't see 2 ways to interpret this. What does she think it means? That you must love every change that happens to you, she explains. She fails to see that love in the sentence is used as a noun and changes as the verb. In her version, love becomes a command, an order. Love that changes. Obviously, she needs help. I've been encouraging her to learn English for years now. Once in a while, she talks about making her retirement final and coming to live with me in the US. Knowing English would really help. What's the subject of the sentence, I ask, and she immediately writes back, the sentence has no subject. It's a subjectless sentence. I remind her that this is unlikely, that in English, every proper declarative sentence must have a subject. And when she considers this proposition, she finally gets it. Love changes everything. Wow, this is so backwards, she writes. I wonder how my aunt is doing with this exercise and if she's got her son, my cousin, helping her from Canada. The 2 sisters could be helping each other, practicing their conversation skills when they get together for dinner or meet in the countryside to prune apple trees or to pick strawberries. Both my aunt and my mother have managed to jettison their children to the other side where the grass is greener, and now all they have is each other. But it's easy for me from across the ocean to fantasize about the communal life back at home. My mom's quick to remind me how things really are. Even when they pick strawberries together, they carefully weigh each other's crops to see who scored the highest. I know English so much better than she does, and why should I help her? My mother scoffs at the suggestion. Let her fend for herself. She would do the same to me. My mother has no time to revel in her success. She's anxious to move on. Everybody's looking for something. What does this mean? That's eurythmics, sweet dreams. What does it mean to you? I think it means that everyone is spying on everyone else, she offers. This is not a translation as much as a diagnosis. Clearly, there's nothing I can really do to help her. I'm almost ready to sign off when I get a message from my cousin. Everybody's looking for something. Translate, please. You should know this, I write back. This is English 101. I'm in the middle of a meeting. No time to chat, he responds. This is the most I've heard from my cousin in over a month. I sit back in my chair and my arms crossed in front of my chest, laugh. It's 11 a.m. already and my morning is shot. Well, what if our mothers did indeed learn English this way and move to be closer to us? For one, I'd have to learn to be a lot more flexible with my schedule. I'd have to learn to love the changes.
Please join me in unmuting, and let's give a big round of applause to Olga. Woo! Awesome. Next up is Tatiana.
Hi, everyone. This is an excerpt from the middle of a short story called Songs from a Past Life. And the main character is talking to a Russian grandmother.
Tatiana, before you dive in, can I brag about you?
Oh, yes, I'm so sorry. Jumped the gun.
Deva is a Russian Jewish writer, originally from Chisinau, Moldova. She writes short fiction, travel writing, and young adult novels, and has been published in Cleaver and Hadassah magazine. She is also on the executive committee of San Francisco's Litquake Festival. Tatiana, now go for it.
Thank you. I'll just dive right in. How's the newborn? Bella's granddaughter, Inna, recently gave birth. Wonderful, but I don't understand American doctors. He released them from the hospital and told them to come back a few days later for a follow-up. A newborn's not supposed to leave the house for at least a few weeks, but Inna had him in this baby seat with his little head drooping a week later. Bella shakes her head. I hate Inna for many reasons, so I'm not surprised to hear of her questionable child rearing. Inna and I met as children, a few short weeks after my family arrived in the United States. My parents enrolled me in a Russian language theater program that met in a cold San Francisco church basement once a week, hoping that new friends would make me forget all that we left behind. The other students also came from mostly Jewish Russian-speaking families, each one in varying degrees of assimilation. The kids like Inna, who immigrated a few years earlier with parents who had in-demand careers such as dentists and computer engineers, fared better. They owned houses, sported American clothes, and rode in cars. They vacationed and ate out. My family and I had just arrived from a country of hot water shortages, minefields, and ethnic cleansing. Throw the Russians across the river, throw the Jews in, the crowds roared. My parents were a poet and a teacher, so I had goodwill and the bus. Then one day, during rehearsals, I had a muffin. Muffins were rare luxuries, but on this day, one had found its way into my possession, and all through class, I waited for the break. When we were finally excused and ran to our things, I sat down and pulled out my treat. Other students were running around, yelling, playing, and Inna, the girl with the wild eyes who laughed inappropriately in class and pretended to be a fortune teller, always predicting your imminent death, was riding around the room on roller skates. Just as I unwrapped the muffin and was about to take a bite, Inna rolled by and grabbed it from my hand. I watched her skate through the room, holding my muffin, and figured that she just wanted to have her fun at my expense before giving it back. That was fine, I was used to it. But halfway through her loop around the room, Inna screeched to a stop on her neon green skates, looked me dead in the eyes, and licked my muffin. The whole damn thing. When she rolled back around, she tossed it back to me with a high laugh and continued skating. I considered eating around the licked portion, but the other kids were watching me and telling me to throw it away. So I came up to the trash and listened to the soft thud as my muffin landed at the bottom of the bin. That evening, my grandma picked me up from class. I saw her standing in the doorway in her heavy knit wool coat, vintage black wedges, and a deep red shade of lipstick. With hair of short curls dyed brown, she looked the youngest of all the grandmas, though I did not appreciate then what that meant to her. She beamed as she always did when she saw me, and when I ran to her, her hug was warm and soft, deliberate, as though she had lost me, and now that she found me, would never let me go. "What's the matter, Solnushka?" Little son epitomized how she made me feel, as though her life revolved around me. I sighed. A girl took my muffin. I did not go into the humiliating details. Who? She looked pained, and I knew that if I told her, there would be fuss and words between grandmas. It doesn't matter. Soon her smile reappeared. "What can I make to cheer you up? How about zpikanka?" "I don't know," I mumbled. My grandma squeezed my hand. "We can make it together." I shook my head again. Zpikanka was not the same. Zpikanka was not exotic. Mixed with the disappointment was guilt that I hadn't been more careful, that I'd obeyed the chorus and threw away something special, like I had plenty to share. My grandma would have found a way to save it. The woman who spent her teen years helping her sister tend to dying soldiers in a base hospital, and who saved every scrap through decades of Soviet deficits, would have known how to rescue a lightly soiled muffin. Holding her hand on that windy night walking to the bus shelter, as she searched for a way to raise my sullen mood, I would have traded a whole consolation zpikanka for one unspoiled blueberry muffin. Of course, I didn't tell Bella about this. She didn't know that I knew her granddaughter at all. Inna probably wouldn't remember me anyway. She left the class a few months later, and I hadn't thought of her again until I saw her crazy eyes staring at me from a photo on Bella's entertainment center. Now she lives in New York with her new executive husband and baby boy. Bella inquires about my grandmother's health, and I don't elaborate because it hurts, and I don't know how to respond to, "I hope she feels better soon," uttered carelessly as Bella moves toward the door to show me out. I'm not one to overstay. Thank you.
Please give it up for Tatiana. Please unmute yourselves. I think you might be able now to use chat to comment to everyone. So see if that works for you. Next up, we have Lyanna Ferman, and I'm going to tell you about her. Lyanna Ferman was born in Kiev and lives in Los Angeles, where she teaches Russian literature at UCLA. Her fiction has appeared in Narrative, book reviews in the Los Angeles Review of Books, and The Baffler, and articles on Russian American fiction, contemporary Russian women writers, and Virginia Woolf's translation of Dostoevsky in various academic venues. With Olga Silverberg, she co-runs Punctured Lines, a feminist blog on post-Soviet and diaspora literature. Lyanna, over to you.
Thank you, Vlada. I'm going to try not to get thrown off Zoom, so hopefully that will not happen. I'm going to read the beginning of a short story called Triple Axel. The one good thing about having arrhythmia, Lena kept thinking, was that she could claim watching her beloved figure skating was a stress-reducing medical necessity. In her living room, suffused with warm Southern California light, she lay back against the oversized couch pillows with her legs wrapped in a blanket, watching the women skaters spin, glide, and jump in the gleaming whiteness of the Moscow arena. Containers of medication sat on the polished surface of the coffee table, awaiting their next scheduled intake. Have the Russians won everything yet? She hadn't heard her daughter come in, and Mara's question in English brought her back from Moscow. When Lina and Vadim immigrated to the US from the Soviet Union, their daughter had just turned 3. Although they spoke to her in Russian and read her Marshak fairy tales and Bartok poems at bedtime, Mara's Russian language skills got stuck at the level where managing something beyond "I'm fine, how are you?" or "Yes, thank you, I'd like some more" was as difficult as performing jump combinations. "The competition isn't over," Lina answered in Russian, "and this is women's singles, so there are strong skaters from the US and Japan." Mara was 12 when Lina and Vadim got divorced, and Lina had been too worn out to resist her daughter's clear preference for English. Nowadays, Mara attempted to speak Russian only to Lina's parents, Babushka Tanya and Dedushka Borya, and when the necessity arose, to Irina and other Russian friends of Lina's, although since they all spoke English to differing degrees, she would invariably switch after a few phrases. But Lina had never stopped speaking Russian to her daughter. She often yielded to Mara's American insanities, like the fat-free food that had no taste and the natural cleaning products that didn't clean, but the Russian was too important to give in on. Mara threw her book back on the floor and came around the side of the sofa. Lina took in her daughter's outfit, a button-down shirt with shorts over tights, all of it black, and had to restrain herself from making her customary "going to a funeral" remark. She also avoided commentary on Mara's hair, which had recently transformed from long and wavy into short and straight, although, as Lina had pointed out to her parents, at least she'd left it as its natural brown rather than opting for something more colorful. Mara saw her mother praising her, but said nothing, picking up Lina's blanket-wrapped feet and placing them in her lap as she sat down. When Lina was diagnosed with arrhythmia the previous spring, her daughter insisted on moving out of her dorm room and back in with Lina to take care of her. Lina protested that there was no need for Mara to radically disrupt her life, but she was touched. She hadn't expected this from the girl who only a few weeks prior was often too busy to have a normal conversation in person or via any electronic medium. Yet she also found her daughter's presence burdensome. Mara walked on eggshells, making a conspicuous effort not to argue or upset her. It was like saying Lina was too frail for life and all its battles. The one amusing aspect was Mara's attempts to feign interest in figure skating. The final group of skaters was warming up on the ice. "Did you watch the pairs?" Lina did her best to stifle the laughter in her voice. "Yes, they were on earlier in the week." "Good, I know they're your favorite." Lina had a sudden urge to beg her daughter to stop living out of Turgenev plot of female self-sacrifice, but knew that Mara wouldn't get the reference. She reminded herself yet again not to be so dismissive. Mara was trying, and she was right. The pair were Lina's favorite. In post-Soviet Russia, single skaters had gained in popularity, but pair skaters were the pride of the Soviet skating world. Soviet pairs had a very distinctive look, classically elegant, with long lines and meticulously synchronized skating elements that set them apart from the others. Until that judging scandal in Salt Lake City, when the Canadians ultimately received the gold medal along with the Russians in an unprecedented tie, Soviet and then Russian pair skaters dominated the podium for 10 straight Olympics. Rodnina and Zaitsev's back-to-back Olympic titles filled Lina with a sense of national pride completely absent at all other times. Of course, Soviet skaters were cherry-picked for both ability and ideological soundness, which in Rodnina's case meant hiding that she was part Jewish. Lina now wished the woman would hide her political career under Putin, but at least the country's domination in this context didn't involve the military. One of the many differences Lina discovered when she came to the United States was that Americans didn't hold figure skating in nearly as high regard, and that pair skating was the least popular type. Aside from Babylonian Gardner, who would have gone head-to-head with Rodnina and Zaitsev at the 1980 Olympics if his injury hadn't made them withdraw, there was barely any pair skating tradition. In one more example of the individual versus collective principle that distinguished her new home from her old one, the focus here was on single skaters. But they were great to watch too. They did all those jumps. On the screen, a skater from Japan was getting ready to do her long program, gliding around the outer edge of the arena before settling in at the center, arms bent at the elbow, stretched over her head, her wrists touching. "She has a triple axel planned," one of the commentators said excitedly. "That's that really hard jump, right?" "Yes." Lina looked at her daughter with surprise. Once, in a seriously misguided attempt to bond with 15-year-old Mara, who happened to be around while Rina was watching the World Figure Skating Championship, she had tried to explain about the different jumps. The hardest one, she had said, was the axel. Unlike the others, which Rina often couldn't identify without the announcers telling her which one it was, the axel had a very distinct forward takeoff, which constituted its difficulty. A single axel required not 1, but 1.5 revolutions to complete. Triple axels were originally the exclusive province of male skaters. Pair and female skaters did doubles. Now all disciplines had raised their jump difficulty, with men doing various quads and triple axels increasingly making their appearance in women's routines. For a while, Mara alternated between staring vacantly at her mother and the TV, saved at last by the sound of the ringing landline, which despite her disdain for an immobile phone, she ran to answer with worrying speed. Lina couldn't imagine her daughter had retained anything of their conversations from 4 years prior. Had she now Googled figure skating facts? Was that one of the links you got directed to from how to cope with a loved one's arrhythmia? Thank you.
Please unmute yourselves and join me in a round of applause for Lyanna. Let me unmute myself there. Let's see here. Perfect. All right. Up next, we have Sasha Vasilyuk. Sasha Vasilyuk is a Russian-American writer who grew up between Moscow and San Francisco. With an MA in journalism from New York University, she has written for Harper's Bazaar, The Telegraph, Narrative, USA Today, Los Angeles Times, San Francisco Chronicle, Newsweek, and Read. She has won the Solas Award for Best Travel Writing and the NATJA Award. Sasha lives in San Francisco, where she is working on a novel. Sasha, over to you.
Hi, everyone. I will be reading an excerpt from my novel in progress, where a Jewish prisoner of war named Yefim survives World War II in Germany, only to have to keep his survival a secret back home in the USSR. His whole life, his family believes him to be a war hero instead, but as you will see from this excerpt, which takes place in 1984, the KGB knows better. This is a story of shame, love, and the price of secrets based on family lore. Yefim fidgeted with his hat on the wooden chair in the windowless interrogation room. His knees bumped against the laminated table. Above him, a yellow light bulb made everything look jaundiced. The officer who'd led him from the passport checkpoint down 2 flights of stairs, along the grim corridor and into this cold, narrow room, had said someone would come soon to begin the questioning. But now Yefim had sat here long enough for his back to start aching from the room's dampness, which seemed to creep in through the walls. With his confession letter in the pocket of his jacket, Yefim waited and thought. He thought about fear, about how this place, its walls, its lighting, the very letters KGB were meant to intimidate whatever lab rat was unlucky enough to end up here. Today, that lab rat was him. And though he knew that the waiting was intended to rattle the nerves, create confusion, and induce penitence, though he'd read enough Solzhenitsyn to know their interrogation techniques, though he'd assured himself that in the year 1984, even the KGB were unlikely to sincerely believe in the bright future of communism, he was still afraid. It was as if they'd pumped a fear-inducing chemical into the room. And yet, as afraid as he was, a part of him was also eager to finally let out his secret and beg that it never left this building. When a tall, sandy-haired officer walked in, Yefim had to keep himself from springing up. Civil Officer Kislich, as he introduced himself, was in his 40s and had a wary reptilian face with round hazel eyes and plump, overly large lips. Kislich slid into the chair on the opposite side of the table and plopped down a file. "All righty then," he said, licking his forefinger and opening the file's flap. "Yefim Grigorievich Sturman, tak?" "Tak," agreed Yefim, trying to peek at the papers under the man's arm. "In reviewing your war record for the upcoming veterans pension, you are nearly retired, aren't you?" Yefim nodded. "It has come to our attention that there are certain discrepancies in your record." Here, he poked his bony finger at the papers and paused. Yefim stared at him, stunned. 40 years he'd been looking over his shoulder, and it took his retirement for them to open his falsified record. Oh, the irony. Can you tell me where you were between June 22nd, 1941 and May 9th, 1945? Kislyk asked. Though it was the exact question he'd expected, Yefim suddenly felt an urge to bang on the table. What right did the schmuck have to ask him that? He was probably a tadpole when Yefim was trying to outrun the Germans. What right did he have to? Of course, every right. This man had every right to ask him why he found artilleryman Yefim Sturman serving in Lithuania at the beginning of the war, and Private Yefim Sturman fighting for Berlin 4 years later, but no Yefim Sturmans in between. The anger crawled back into a tight ball inside him. Yefim swallowed hard. I've prepared a statement, he said. It explains everything. Ah, have you? Kislyk said, licking his large lips. Let's see it. Yefim reached into his pocket, then hesitated. What if confessing was the wrong decision? No one ever confessed to the KGB, not unless there was no other choice. Didn't he still have a choice? Couldn't he make up something or feign memory loss? But somehow the folded letter was already moving from his fingers toward Kislyk, who had extended his long arm to take it. The KGB officer unfolded the letter and began to read. Yefim's heart bucked like a frenzied horse. He imagined himself having a heart attack, how he'd clutch his failing organ and slump over the desk, his face landing on its cold laminated surface right next to his confession. An ending straight out of something his wife could make up. Husband found dead outside the KGB headquarters after missing his wife's birthday. But no, it was not his time to go yet. First, he needed to make sure his family never learned of his past. When Kislyk finished reading the confession letter, he got up and began to pace the room slowly, his hands behind him like a professor. Yefim didn't dare turn. Instead, he listened to the scuffle of the officer's shoes against the concrete floor. 1, 2, 1, 2. Let me get this straight. You, Tavarish Sturman, have been lying to the motherland for nearly 40 years, and now you're asking us to help you keep the shameful truth from your family. Do I have that right? Yefim's moment had come. Thank you, everyone.
All right, please join in unmuting and giving a huge round of applause for Sasha. Thank you, Sasha. All right, I think you can still hear me. Yes, yes. Great. We still have Marsha Rumor next. Marsha Rumor's nonfiction book, Parenting with an Accent: How Immigrants Honor Their Heritage, Navigate Setbacks, and Chart New Paths for Their Children, was published by Beacon Press this week. You can pick it up tomorrow at Folio Books. If you are local, come by at 11. Pick it up. Back to Marsha Rumor. Marsha Rumor's writing has appeared in the New York Times, the Washington Post, the Moscow Times, and Parents, winning awards from the New York Press Association. She was born in St. Petersburg, Russia. Over to you.
Okay, thank you so much. Hi, everybody. So excited to see everybody here, and thank you so much for Folio for hosting us. So yes, my book just came out on Tuesday. It's available in hardcover, also in Audible, an audio version, and Kindle. And it's just a word about it. It's indeed, it's about parenting, but not only. It's about the immigrant experience overall. Only a section of it is devoted to the parenting experience. In fact, a lot of it just describes my own experience with immigrating, adapting, and I'm not sure if the process ever really ends. So I think that for people who are not parents or not parents of young children, they'll have plenty to relate to. So if you're interested, check it out. I'll say a little bit more at the end about tomorrow, because there is going to be another event with Olga Silverberg. But in the meantime, I wanted to read a section from the book. The book has a lot of research on various aspects, but the one I'm going to read right now is a personal recounting of the time when I just immigrated to the United States as a teenager from St. Petersburg or Leningrad. Okay. Soon, I no longer wanted to speak Russian in public. I was embarrassed by my clothes, bought at a discount store or plucked from a donation bin, so different from what Kelly and Brenda wore on Beverly Hills 90210. Aside from being a fashion disaster, self-conscious teenagers generally dread three things: failing a test, romantic rejection, and being trapped naked in a room full of people. For an immigrant, the list of public humiliation anxieties is even longer. One is being unable to communicate. If you don't have the language, you don't have a voice. You'll be left out of all the important conversations in the girls' locker room about makeup, sun-ripened raspberry moisturizer, and sex, and of most other conversations, actually, even if you do their algebra homework for them. You're welcome, Brittany. Even if you carry a paper dictionary in your backpack, because it's of little use if you're piecing together the meaning of let's hook up and kick it, which would translate roughly as давай скрючимся и будем пинать это, or that dude is lame, which, as it turns out, does not mean an inexperienced cowboy with a limp. While learning English, you might speak in your native tongue with others from your country, but not everyone will approve. Like the girl in the lunch line who'll remark, I hate when they do that. My parents worked hard to bring them to America and they just don't even want to learn. With an eye roll, her girlfriend will agree, yeah, so disrespectful. You might develop a crush on a curly-haired junior who plays guitar at your school. He seems so poetically withdrawn that the language barrier isn't an issue. It doesn't even matter that he's often trailed by a girl who wears a hoodie and smokes by the creek and carries her JanSport backpack slung off one shoulder. You just admire the boy silently from afar, except for that one glorious time when you end up walking upstairs to algebra, right behind him, an herbal fragrance trailing from his jacket. Yo, Jason, you overhear his buddy say. So where do you see her, man? His name is Jason. How Greek, how timeless, how Adonis-like. On my cock, he responds. The two boys chortle and high-five one another. Later, you consult various dictionaries to figure out what that word means, then spend the rest of the night wishing you hadn't. Another awkward immigrant situation, teen situation, is being watched by American peers from their windows as you deliver their newspapers with your family. We would park our Buick next to the multi-car driveways and get to work. I walked ahead with a bag while my parents mapped out our route and sorted out the American system in Russian. This says 740 Cherry Tree ST, but we need 740 Cherry Tree Court. Well, could ST be short for court? C and S can sort of sound the same in English. What I want to know is why name two adjacent streets in the same way? And how come half these houses don't even have an address marked on them? What, you bought yourself a Mercedes but couldn't afford a painter? Well, maybe they just don't want anyone to come over who doesn't know how to find them. You know, it's the whole personal space thing in America. They want personal space, then get a guard dog and don't sign up for newspaper deliveries, what I'd tell these nudniks. I kept on depositing the newspapers on the doorsteps and praying for a mound of sand to bury my head in for a few years, or at least until my family and I could speak English without an accent and wear Gap clothes like everybody else. Thank you.
Please unmute yourself. Join me.
Bravo, bravo.
Woo. All right, thank you, Masha. Up next, we have Maggie. Maggie Lovantoska emigrated from Kiev, Ukraine to San Francisco at the age of 10. She's a nonfiction writer whose work has appeared in The Rumpus, Michigan Quarterly Review, Catapult, and LitHub. She teaches in the English department at Santa Clara University. Over to you, Maggie.
Thank you so much. Hi, I'm another immigrant. It's really great to be here. I'm going to be reading from an essay called Tracing the Wolf. It's published in The Rumpus, and you can actually find it on their website to read for free. This essay is about the relationship between tattoos, my cultural baggage, and my chronic illness. And I am hoping that one day it'll be part of a larger project on chronic illness. Tracing the Wolf. The first tattooed person I ever knew was Misha, my mother's first boyfriend in the US. She didn't call him that yet, but I knew that that's what he'd become as soon as he stepped into our studio apartment, helping her carry a tall, leafy houseplant. My mom's new female friend was also with them. Together, they came from the language course all adults had to take to receive financial assistance. Immigration briefly leveled the playing field between me and my mom. I studied English in my 5th grade ESL class, and she studied it in the evening. It only took a few months for me to pull ahead of her. How do you like our $1 million view? My mom waved to our visitors. Through the windows, you could see a far-off miniature Golden Gate Bridge, as if shrunken to fit the frame. It was our sliver of luxury in this dingy apartment, where we ate buckwheat kasha brought over from Ukraine because we didn't know if we'd be able to afford American groceries. While all 3 chatted and joked about their teacher, I pretended to play with my toys, observing from the sidelines. The woman wore a velour tracksuit, which this early after our immigration, I considered the epitome of style. The man's clothing didn't make an impression either way. He was congenial, which was a plus, but he was shorter than my mom, which was a minus, though not a deal breaker. He was a Russian Jewish greenhorn like us, which wasn't exactly helpful in our project to become Americans, but was hardly surprising. I would have tuned them out, playing with the doll I chose at Toys R Us for my 10th birthday, just days after arriving in the US, if my eyes hadn't landed on Misha's forearm, a real-life tattoo, somewhat faded, somewhat covered by hair, but undeniable. In Soviet Ukraine, I only saw them in movies and always on sailors and criminals, and I had no reason to think Misha was a sailor. Squinting, I could tell his tattoo was religious, a Virgin Mary. Was she holding a child? Ugh, I shuddered. Why would this Soviet Jew have a mark on his body? Why would it be Christian? None of it made sense. I wanted to look closer, but I also never wanted to see him again. Look and not look. This was my pattern when it came to Misha's tattoo for the years he lived with us. It wasn't just that I found his markings offensive. I winced at the pain they suggested, unbearable to my young mind. Though he and my mom argued a lot, he was kind to me, and we became close. Still, I never asked him the story of his tattoos. I simply knew that this was not done. So I snuck glimpses, the way one does with something curious and disturbing. Religious symbols were like islands on his body. I tried to connect them, but couldn't. There were many crosses, and on one of his pecs, a large Russian Orthodox church with its iconic onion domes. I liked Misha, so I accepted his tattoos. But if I could have had it my way, I would have erased them all. Thank you.
Give it up for Maggie. Woo. All right, Masha, do you want to do the honors?
Sure. Great. All right. So it is can you hear me okay? Yeah, okay. It is my pleasure to introduce our moderator for today, Vlada Teper. Vlada is a Russian Jewish writer, teacher, and entrepreneur from Moldova. Her essays have been featured in Perspectives on KQED, which is an NPR affiliate here in the Bay Area. Her poetry has appeared in the Oberon Poetry Magazine and Tulip Tree Review, among others. With master's degrees in English and Education from Stanford University, Vlada is the recipient of the 826 Valencia Teacher of the Month Award and the founder of IMU, which is Inspiring Multicultural Understanding, a multicultural leadership program for recent immigrant youth in San Francisco. She is currently completing her debut work about teaching sex ed and PE to high school students. And Vlada, we're excited to hear you.
Thank you, Masha. I'm going to read from the beginning of the book. This is shortly after I find out that despite being an English teacher, I have to teach PE and sex education, or I will not have a job. What if a student asked me a question I didn't have an answer to? What if they knew more about sex than I did? I found my purple lunch tote on top of the potato bin next to the wine bottles. I set it on the kitchen counter and rubbed my forehead. The problem was that at Wild Hearts, you taught explicitly. Working with English language learners, you explained vocabulary along with concepts without holding back. You broke things down. Being vague meant being a shitty teacher, and being a shitty teacher meant you didn't belong at Wild Hearts. I opened the refrigerator and took out 4 slices of bread and tara masalata. Spreading the pink fishy cream over the bread, I compressed my neck left and right, trying to get rid of tension. Fraud. My new name? Students would smell fear and find me out. Sure, I would prepare for this class. Of course I would. Still, I dreaded the first day of school like a visit to the dentist. I took care of my teeth, but inevitably, as I slumped in the patient's chair, bad news always came. You need to floss more, the dentist pounced. Okay, no problem. Is there a problem? You have a cavity. Another cavity? The dentist always uncovered my flaws. Now the students would too. They would chase me out of a profession I thought mine through and through. Back in Kishinev, I had solidified my career plans in kindergarten. My teacher, Nina Romanovna, had curly hair and uncontrollable anger. When I couldn't sleep during nap time and whispered something to my friend, she nearly expelled me. With a burst of "Niet Vlada," Nina Romanovna grabbed my hand and pulled me off my cot toward the blue-white corner of the room. I shivered in my underwear and faced the peeling paint. Hands up. I stood with my hands raised for the rest of nap time. I learned that hands turned into bricks if held up long enough. I missed my pre-K teacher. She let me draw as much as I wanted to and play with a large turtle. Nina Romanovna did not have crayons nor turtles. One day, I came home from school and presented a resolution to my grandmother. Babushka, I'm going to be a kindergarten teacher, I announced, entering the house directly into the kitchen. The smell of buckwheat boiling on the stove greeted my nostrils. Next to the stove, Babushka stood slicing onions. A large, pale woman with long fingers, fine skin, and a protruding belly. She was always in motion, cooking, cleaning, reading me books, and checking my homework. She had been a Russian literature teacher for many years before she worked as an editor. Looking away from the onions to smile at me, she wiped her right eye with a kerchief and took in my announcement. "Да ну, молодец. That a girl?" Decades later, in our California kitchen, I wrapped my lunch sandwiches in plastic wrap and stashed them in the fridge for the next day. How could I let down my grandmother? Should I switch careers? Would Babushka forgive me if I became an editor? Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you, everyone. I'm unmuting myself. There we go. Thank you so much. We have come to the conclusion of the reading, if you can believe it, but we're not done quite yet with the event. So I know all of you have been on the edge of your seats to find out who is who from the baby pictures. So we are going to start with that. We'll do some more unfinished business afterwards, and then we'll move into the Q&A. Also in the chat, you can see information about us. You will also get some Twitter handles and other ways to get in touch with us in a little bit. Thank you so much, Masha. Awesome. All right, Masha, are you ready for the big reveal? I'm going to go ahead and share the screen again with our baby pictures. Let's see. Here we are. All right. Masha, if you can do the big reveal, who is who?
Okay. Oh my goodness. Let me just make sure I have all that in front of me. Let's see. So should we read, do you want to first read the guesses that we had maybe? So really quickly.
A lot of guesses. No, I think we should just dive right in.
All right, let's do it. Okay, so number one is, I think somebody had that correctly. Number one is, I'm opening this on my screen to make sure I even get it right, although I don't think we've changed. Number one is Tatiana Sundeva.
Woohoo!
Yay. Number two is Vlada Teper. Number three is Maggie Lovantoska.
Maggie.
Yay. Number four, the musician, that's Sasha Vasilyuk.
Yes, Sasha.
Number five is Lyanna Ferman. Number six is Olga Silverberg.
Olga.
I think the only blonde one among us. And number seven is me, Masha, looking semi-excited to begin first grade. All right.
Thank you. So there you go. I think there were some correct guesses for sure. Thank you, everyone who participated in that. You can see information about getting in touch with us. Masha, if you have additional information with Twitter and other social media, feel free to add it, or anyone else, writers yourselves, feel free to add it in the chat. So you all know how to get in touch with us. Tomorrow, you have an opportunity to meet some of us live in person. Masha and Olga will be at Folio Books at 11 a.m. in Noe Valley to sign the books. Come by. You have a chance to pick up both of these books. You'll have to wait a little bit longer for the other books that are coming out from the rest of us. All right. So we are about to transition into the Q&A portion of our event. Please be brave and add your questions into the chat. Feel free to be specific if it's for a specific person, or it can be a general question. That works as well. But I'll start us off right now. Masha, is it okay if I jump into a speed round real quick, or did you want to make any other announcements? Perfect, thank you. There are the Twitter handles right there. Great way to get in touch with us. I know you all have lots of comments, so post them on Twitter right away. Don't wait, you know you'll forget. Also, right away, go ahead and write your questions in the chat. We are going to not have a very long Q&A session. We'll keep it fairly short, so don't wait. There's no bad questions. Put them in the chat. But for now, I will go ahead and awesome. Yes, great comment from Olga in the chat. I'm going to go ahead and ask our first speed round question just to get us warmed up. So the question is, and we'll use the same order that we've been following. What's the first word that comes to mind when you hear the verb to write? What's the first word that comes to mind when you hear the verb to write? So first we're going with Olga.
Wow, that's a good one. I guess the means of production, right? It's the computer. Like, right? I gotta. Where's my computer? It's interesting too, because for years I've been trying to journal, and I read letters in Russian by hand, and but when I work, I do English and computer. So that's my answer.
Awesome, thank you. Tatiana, you're up.
I would say joy, because I don't think doing anything else brings me as much joy, work-wise anyway, as writing does. And I would love to do that full time for the rest of my life. It's the only thing that I think would make me that happy.
Thank you. Lyanna, you're up.
I'm just laughing when Tatiana said joy, because my first thought was pain, but also joy and a gift. And I totally agree. That is the one thing that makes me the happiest. And I qualify definition of happy being a Russian immigrant, but that is the one thing that is most sustaining and most fulfilling, I would say.
Thank you. Sasha, over to you.
Sorry, I'm like, there's fun things happening in the chat, so I was distracted for a minute. To write means to find time. Time has become, with two little kids, such a non-existent commodity. And every time I find a scrap of it, I try to grab it and hold on to it. I feel like as writers, we often dream of this place far away from the world where we're alone, the like mythical writer's cabin where we're like writing and producing so much work, but that doesn't exist. And B, I'm recently trying to give myself the lesson that even like the 15 minutes of quiet is a time that I need to be doing something. So.
Thank you. Yep, reality check. Masha.
Oh man, I'm so glad that I'm not the first, because my first word that came to mind was also kind of negative. It was guilt. I think a lot of us struggle with the whole notion that to be a real writer, you have to write like 8 hours a day, every day, with a perfectly clean desk, and just drink a lot of water, maybe some occasionally green tea. But really, my relationship with it changes. To me, to write is means to have a voice, to have power, and to empower others, and especially when I'm teaching writing or have taught writing, or help others achieve their goals by writing. So it's not just the way of self-expression, but it's also a way to achieve means, and to achieve your dreams, and my dreams too. It's a little cheesy, but that's how I feel.
Thank you. Maggie.
I too am grateful to have had a little bit of time to think about my word, because the first one that came to mind was struggle. But the word I'm actually going to say is connecting. It connected me to all of you, which has been wonderful and fulfilling. And also it's helped me connect a bunch of seemingly unconnected things that I'm interested in, and things that have happened to members of my family and to me. Like, it's helped me understand my mom, my illness, my certain experiences. And if you read my essay, there are a bunch of these connections, disconnections between tattoos in Russian culture and tattoos in Jewish culture. And when I started writing the essay, I had no idea that I would be thinking in terms of those connections. That just happened through the writing. So yeah, connection.
Thank you. And for me, it's synthesis and also miraculous. I couldn't really decide which one. I do a lot of nonfiction or creative nonfiction kind of writing, and I've been finding that it's very healing. It helps me to make meaning of a lot of the experiences that are happening in my life. So now we're going to jump into questions in the chat, and I will let Masha do the honors there.
All right. Thank you, Vlada. So we actually have quite a few. And by the way, I know we have quite a busy chat window. I just wanted to remind everybody that I did post, if you want to check out some more of our work, we have posted the links to everybody's website or project in the chat, in addition to the Twitter handle, if you're interested in connecting with us or checking out more of our stuff. All right. So the first question, sorry, I'm trying to hear. Okay. What helped you the most when you were learning English? Was it TV, your English as a second language class, or something else? That's a great question.
That's from me, because I'm a retired ESOL teacher. So it's, a lot of people say TV, which I find kind of hilarious, but I guess even the stupid programs.
That can definitely help. Yes. Do any of our readers today, did anybody wants to tackle that question or share what helped them learn, whether here or in the motherland?
Well, I can go. I don't honestly remember my ESL classes very well. I did take some before we came to the United States, but they only taught me 8 English words, which were not super useful. And I don't really remember the classes I took here in school, but I do remember every day after school watching The Simpsons with my cousins, running to the couch, yelling, "The Simpsons are on, The Simpsons are on." And my family wasn't quite, they didn't know what The Simpsons were. They thought we were really excited about the O.J. Simpson trial. So they were confused, but I think actually I learned a lot more English from The Simpsons than I did from the class.
Great. Anybody else? Oh, perfect.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for me, reading and also having separate vocabulary lists. And I would do this thing where I would write the new words in English, definitions in Russian, and I would look at the words before going to sleep and try to review and see if I could close the Russian and do the definitions. So vocabulary acquisition definitely helped.
I'm going to sound kind of old, but I'm so glad that social media was not a thing when I was young and first came to America, because I just had the library. Like I would go to the library and check out books. And, I started by reading like Goosebumps, and then I started reading Anne Rice novels. And that was how I learned about sex. I don't know about you guys. It was just like through vampires. That's very formative for me.
That's perfect. I guess for me, it depends on where. And in Russia, obviously classes, and I translated songs by the Beatles, or tried to translate. And here, I wouldn't even say, in addition, or more than even ESL classes, which I took, it was The Simpsons for sure. So yes, Tatiana, I'm definitely on board there. But also writing, like a lot of reading, just reading encyclopedias, like going to sleep with a thesaurus dictionary, which probably explains my experience in high school with that boy who played guitar. My dictionary. And definitely writing poetry, like sad poetry. Anybody else?
I always thought I was bad at languages when I was in school, because in the Soviet system had you memorizing a lot of text. Like we had to just memorize several pages of English text, and it was so hard. And I still remember like trying to respond, and I would get so nervous. And if you forget like one word, you fall apart, because like you have to recite it as a poem. So yeah, it's just I guess being here made the difference.
I think reading for me, and also TV, like both of those. But Maggie, your comment just reminded me that my grandmother, actually, part of her learning English here was reading Harlequin novels, because they are easy to follow. So anything that works.
I love that. Anything that works. So I want to move on to this next question, a great question by Galina. As immigrants, we all carry a certain cultural baggage. What part of this baggage do you feel has helped you succeed in the US? What a great question. And I guess specifically in the Bay Area, but we can also extend that, of course, to the southern part of California. And what were you glad to leave behind? So what part of the cultural baggage helped you succeed, and what were you happy to leave behind?
I'll jump in, because yeah, we were just talking about this at Marsha's book release party. Because I think there's a way in which women are socialized somewhat differently as girls in the Soviet Union. So the thing that helped me is that I was never afraid to jump in and answer things, or like use my elbows when I needed to, and I think that really the thought that as a woman I shouldn't be speaking never occurred to me, and I think that did help. I mean, a lot of things did hold me back, including my I came here as an international student, and trying to get a job with a student visa is nearly impossible, but yeah.
Great. Yeah, definitely. Anybody else has had that experience, whether it's having different cultural expectations based on our gender identification, or anybody else wants to comment?
I can go. Yeah, there is definitely a different way that I think I also wasn't afraid to, and I think part of it is cultural, and part of it maybe is your family, right? That I was always told you are as smart as boys, right? You shouldn't be afraid. But at the same time, and which really helped me, and also very stereotypically, right? The hard immigrant work ethic, right? The sort of, that helped. But also it was really great to leave behind that other flip side of gender, which women are still told, right, can't be a feminist, don't, right? So that was very nice to leave behind and go on to college and major in feminist studies. That was lovely.
I think for me, the baggage that I'm glad to have had is actually just the kind of like pessimism and realism. Yeah, I never quite became optimistic. And I think that's been really useful, particularly in the past few years, just to keep your expectations low and expect the worst so you won't be disappointed. But also like so much of that baggage has, with time and with a lot of us evolving, has made for great writing material. The thing that I don't miss, the thing that I'm happy to have left behind, honestly, is like the dream of America, the dream that there was like this great place elsewhere. And then, we came here and saw, it was a place of much struggle as well, in some ways, even harder than back there. So it's nice to just know that there isn't like some Eden somewhere. And I think that probably for as long as I would have lived in Ukraine, I would have thought that I would have been happier living in some other country.
Okay, well, thank you, everybody. I know we have just a few minutes left, but there was this actually a really great specific question from Luba Markovskaya, I'm sorry, I'm mispronouncing it. Our event description aptly said that there was a discussion or such topics as when a story about when your dying grandmother forgets English and Russian but begins speaking to you in Yiddish. So the person was very intrigued by that description. Does anybody want to comment on where, if that's material that's already published or in progress? This was a question, just a general question. Was that your story, Olga?
Sorry, what? Sorry, I'm also preoccupied by the fascinating chat thing.
Oh no.
I think Olga actually answered her and told her that it's from an old story of hers.
Yeah, I think I came up with that description. Yeah, I think I think you were referring to Luba's comment. Yeah, I came up with a bit of the description, I think, from an old story. I don't think it's ever been published in English. It actually it came out in my first Russian book, so in Russian translation. But I'll look for it. It'll be interesting to revisit.
Perfect. So I think, do we have time for just a question or two, or do we want to wrap up? Okay. Well, this is a big one. It's from Olga Lipshin. Thank you, Olga. So happy you're here. That's a big one. It's about self-identification. So the question is, I noticed many of the authors identify as Russian American writer, but lately it seems like people search for something more historically specific. So there's a, topic, the adjective Soviet has come up in my circles as a self-identification moniker. Some people identify as Ukrainian Jewish American. Does anybody identify themselves as more than Russian? Or more specific than Russian?
I guess I'll jump in on this too, just because Yelena and I, this is maybe a good time to plug in the blog that a lot of you I think already know, but Yelena and I run a blog called Punctured Lines, where we feature writers and writing from the post-Soviet post-Soviet and diaspora writers, and so we keep talking about identifications and identity labels, and it is really hard. And there's just, I don't think there's there's a unifying way to do it. Personally, I always say I grew up in Leningrad, St. Petersburg, and I live in San Francisco. I identify by my cities and avoid countries at all costs.
I'm just going to jump in and say I teach and I write on Russian American writers, and this is how I started out. And the Russian American writers, I'm just going to say right now, came, I think I put that in the chat, it came from American publishers who were marketing this literature, and we are all stuck with this label. And so this is where it comes from. So this is who I blame. And I spent God knows how many paragraphs in everything I've ever written describing and explaining what it is that we mean by Russian. It is not an ethnic identification. It is not a geographical identification, right? So yeah, and this label is ever shifting. And some people say Russian Jewish American, and we keep adding terms to it, ex-Soviet American. I shift between them, but I've just been using this for over a decade. So, I'm stuck with it.
I'll jump in. I usually identify as Russian Jewish American born in Moldova or Jewish Russian American born in Moldova. But I really want to, I love that you mentioned the shifting nature of identities. I think identity does shift constantly, and, it might be different. I have an essay on this topic. I think it's really, really interesting.
Yeah, I'll jump in. Like Vlada, I'm also from Moldova. And if I just tell people I'm from Moldova, they tend to assume, that you're Moldovan because that's how it works in America, So then I have to give a brief geographical lesson and a brief lesson in ethnicities and the migrations of the Soviet Union. And I end up landing on, okay, so I'm Russian Jewish from Moldova, which is, and then, yeah, it's a mouthful, but I like to be precise. So I'm going to stick with it. And I think I've changed it in my bio already several times between Russian American, Russian Jewish, etc. But I'm still perfecting it, but I like to be precise.
It is a process, indeed. I'll just say that I don't actually know. I think Russian American just because I'm from St. Petersburg, Russia. But yeah, but I'm really just, sometimes it just gets tiring to answer questions like, is Russia big? Or is it cold in Russia? And then anyway, but if people are interested, so that's good, I suppose. But anyway, so I think it is an ever evolving topic in some ways, right? How do we identify ourselves? What terms do we use? Because it changes throughout our lives and throughout our creative processes. But we are actually approaching the end of our event. Before I turn it over to Vlada, I just wanted to let everybody know that tomorrow morning, if you're in San Francisco, I'm going to drop this into chat right now. Tomorrow morning, Olga and I will be signing our books in person. So Olga's short story collection just recently came out. Like Water and Other Stories. I love this collection. It is so lively. It's got so many diverse perspectives on being an immigrant, a mother, being a member of a family, being a member of the diaspora. So I highly recommend it. And of course, my book that just came out will also be there for sale. I also just wanted to mention about Folio. It is your local bookstore. So try to, even if you're not in San Francisco, try to support your indie bookstores. They need our help. So Folio in particular is in Noe Valley in San Francisco, and Olga and I will be there at 11 o'clock tomorrow morning on Sunday, if you can drop by. I do just want to say thank you so much, everybody, for visiting and for participating, and I will turn it over to Vlada again, our fantastic host and moderator for today.
Thank you so much, Masha. Just a couple of last words to close us out. Again, a shout out to Folio Books for sponsoring this event and making it possible. Thank you, Folio. Like Masha said, come if you can and pick up really awesome books by Masha and Olga tomorrow at 11. There's a lot of really cool stuff in the chat, and you guys are able to save it. So I'm just gonna, in case you're not sure how, it's if you open the chat and you click on the 3 dots, the small 3 dots, tiny button, you can save the chat. So if you're at all interested in saving any of the information, do that now before we close the Zoom. So again, it's 3 tiny dots in the right next to file where it says file in the chat, and you can click save chat. I'm going to do that right now, and that happens like that. This has been recorded and the video will be available. Masha, do you know if anybody needs to do anything, or will it just be magically sent to participants? Do you have any idea? We can't hear you.
Sorry about that. Yeah, I think we'll just send it to the participants. When you registered, you provided your email address, so we will share the recording with you.
Perfect. So at this point, if you are celebrating Hanukkah, you should rush to light the candles because the window is almost over. And I hope everyone has a great night.
My friend Sharon in like the 80s or something, she and her aunts decided to give each
Well, we
other
can hear you.
nicknames. So she had
Bye, everyone. Have a good night.
Bye, everyone. Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you. This is
you.
All
great.
right, I'm
Bye.
gonna end if that's cool with everybody.
Yes.
Yes.
Mhm. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.